Thank you, Peter, for giving us a report. Praise God for what he's doing. It's amazing how when you put yourself out there and serve, and you don't know what's going to come of it, God blesses. Some people here started a ministry to distribute food to needy people, I believe, on the second Thursday of every month. Is that correct? Is it the second Thursday? Some time ago, I don't know how many years ago, way before I got here, a young lady named Yosaris was also involved in that, and she came to the Lord recently, a couple of months ago, with her husband. Nick and Yosaris became Christians and assembled with this church here. Yosaris has a friend named Rosi that used to come with her to the assemblies here. Rosi eventually moved back to Los Angeles where she goes to school, but her mom was interested in what's going on here, so her mom came. And they needed help in the food ministry, and so her mom was pulled in to be part of the food ministry. Her name is Josefina. And Josefina, that led to Josefina and her husband starting to read the Bible. And they were baptized 3 weeks ago because of service. And they're here with us this morning, and they would just stand up. Their son is Alejandro. He's here as well. So Jesus, Josefina, and their son Alejandro. So we just thank God. You know, His Word goes out and it does not come back void. If you're serving and different ministries, just find ways to meet people's needs and then give them the bread of life. Not everybody will respond, but people respond whose hearts are open to the Lord. There was a man in Mark chapter 5 that I'm going to read about right now. And we're going to speak a little bit about him, and then we'll have some other activities. Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 20. I'm going to we have someone interpreting into Spanish. I'll give them a little bit of time to look this up in the Bible that I left back there for them. But this is a man who is in some amazing circumstances, amazing condition, ends up having no hope in his own circumstances, but only in Jesus. And then Jesus sends him on a mission. Mark chapter 5. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes, where Jesus got out of the boat, and a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs. No one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot. But he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Luke 8 also has this story. Luke adds this other comment. He not only cried out, it says, for a long time, this man had worn no clothes, and he lived in a house. Nor did he live in a house, but he lived in the tombs. Here's a naked man running around the hills, living in the caves, cutting himself. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of God Most High? In God's name, do not torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What's your name?" And he said, "My name is Legion," he said, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us into the pigs, allow us to go into them." And he gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd of pigs, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and the countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by a legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but he said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell all the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and the people were amazed. This man was in a horrible condition, and we're not always responsible for the condition in which we're in. I don't know how this man came to be in this condition, but he was a man that had his body full of demons, and it had affected him to such an extent that he couldn't live in the village anymore. People ran him out of town. He lived in caves. He ran around naked. This, you know, if you were a parent of middle school kids, which like to go out and do things. I remember when I was a middle school kid and even in primary grades, and like to just go out and do things. We would just go out and be gone for a long time. But I would imagine a mom or a dad would warn their kid about this guy. You know, don't go out to the caves today, Bobby, or or Ray. Don't go out to the caves. And I would imagine if you were a middle school kid into pranks and stuff, as I was, if you went out to the caves and tried something on this guy, you would only do it once. This guy was quite bad, in a quite bad condition, and yet they were not able to do anything for him. There was no hope among the men, or at least that the men could do anything to him. They would chain him up, and he would break the chains. The demons inside of this man had a powerful force, and so there was no hope to be found. Nobody could control him. I think about the things that we do to try to control our demons that we have, our misdeeds. I do believe that Satan walks about and like a lion seeking prey, trying to devour people. And I do believe that in John 10, when Jesus said the thief comes only to rob and to destroy and to kill, I believe that's talking about satanic forces. And I've seen people, and I don't know how the demons worked in the day of Jesus and how they work today and to what extent, but I know God has power over them. And I've seen people under power of demons. And I've seen Satan work in my own life through my own misdeeds or my own desires and wrong application of them. How do we get ourselves into these conditions? Nobody could control this man, and sometimes we can't control ourselves. Many of us here, that might be an overstatement, but there's quite a few of us here that work in schools or in school districts. And one of the things I learned, I'm new working in schools, or at least in the school district that I work in. One of the things that I've learned is that we have lots of programs. We have lots of federal funding. We have lots of state funding. We have local funding. And we have all kinds of situations arise, and we create programs to fix people. And sometimes our programs can't fix people. Sometimes the children, the situations, the scenarios, as much as we try to do, they're in conditions that our programs can't fix. I know that there are needs for programs. I know that doctors need to prescribe medications for some people. I know that our human condition, I have relatives that need medications for certain problems that they have physically because they need medications. But I also know that as much as we try and fix things, many times the problem is not fixable because it's in the human heart. And so as much as we try to fix things with programs or medications, and again, disclaimer, some people need programs and obviously some people need medications, but many times it's bad decisions, bad choices, bad directions that we've taken in the human heart. We say, that we have an illness. In fact, we've learned to call our addictions illnesses. We used to say, I haven't heard it frequently or commonly now, but we used to say, the devil made me do it, as if to divert the blame from ourselves, when actually that's literally true. Some demon, some devil got into our hearts and made us do it. We say, I was born this way, or that's just the way I am, to excuse our hard-headedness or our lack of flexibility or our anger issues. We call them anger issues, instead of just saying, I'm an angry person. When things go bad, some people eat. We drown our misery in food. We give ourselves license to do a lot of things that we know are bad for us, or we just plainly become immoral. And we feel like we deserve these luxuries because life has treated us wrong. We say, I can't help myself, as an excuse, when I can't help myself really should be a confession. We say, I can't help myself as an excuse, when it really should be a confession. And it is a confession, because we can't help ourselves. And this man couldn't help himself, nor could any of the people around him help him. They tried chaining him, they tried controlling him, and they finally just had to decide to live with him. There's nothing else they could do, to coexist with him. And that's what people do. They coexist many times with their problems or their addictions or their problematic people. They coexisted with this guy. They left him out there in the caves. They couldn't chain him. They couldn't control him. Leave him out there. Just avoid that area. And so Jesus comes along. Since there's no hope for this man in the community, they've just started coexisting with him and going about their daily lives in their regular routines and just avoiding him. Jesus comes along and gives him hope. And when Jesus approaches him, the demons inside this man know who Jesus is. I'm amazed at how throughout the scriptures, the demons know who Jesus is. Jesus spent so much time trying to convince the disciples and the multitudes who he was. The demons knew immediately who he was. You are the Son of God. You'll find that frequently in encounters of Jesus and the demons. They confess him as the Son of God. Don't send us out into the abyss. Don't send us out of this area. Send us into this herd of pigs. And it's exactly what Jesus does. In the herd of pigs, 2,000 go rushing off and fall into the sea. And there the demons and the pigs are destroyed. Jesus is his only hope. God is our only hope. Jesus said, where your treasure is, there is your heart. And Jesus can change your heart. In Jeremiah 24:7, God says through the prophet, I will give them a heart to know me, that I am the Lord. They will be my people, I will be their God, and they will return to me with all their heart. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit, or steadfast spirit within me. And in Romans 12:2, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Mind, heart is metaphor for your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is. We need the transforming of our mind. We need the transforming of our heart. And only Jesus is able to do that. And so when we say things like, I can't help it, this is just the way I am, we are using that as an excuse, but we're actually confessing the truth. Only God can change our hearts. And that's why so many medications and so many programs, again, disclaimer, I know some people need these things. Some people very close to me need these. But in so many cases, these are crutches to excuse us from our heart being changed by an almighty God who wants to change our heart. Jesus can change our heart. And Jesus changed this man. Only Jesus has the power to kick out those evil desires and things within us. Only Jesus has the power to cure our anger issues and give us the love and forgiveness that he supplies. I need Jesus to come in and transform my heart. The changed man lived in a community of people that had accepted him the way he was. A community that when 2,000 swine are killed, felt more remorse and more fear over what Jesus would continue to do and their loss of their swine than they felt desire to have Jesus continue to be with them, because they actually asked him to leave. In Luke 8:37, corresponding passage, it says, all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So Jesus got into the boat and left. This man lived in a community of people that couldn't heal him, couldn't help him. They could only coexist with him. And so what did the community do? When the man was healed, they asked the healer to leave. Interesting. I ask myself, why did the people ask Jesus to leave? I think there's two reasons. Number one, I think Jesus creates change, and most people are afraid of change. Just like this man, or this community of people, we get used to our bad behavior. We get used to the people who behave badly and try and isolate them and put them in different places to control them or control ourselves. We just learn how to get along with it. But when Jesus comes into a person's life and radically transforms it, people are afraid of change. They like the status quo. And many people don't want change. I think the reason these people were afraid partially was because they're afraid of change. And Jesus brings change. And another thing that comes to my mind that perhaps they were afraid of is Jesus claims lordship. The devils knew that Jesus was the Son of God. The demons knew that. But people in a community, such as ourselves, we live in a community, when someone comes in who has that kind of power and commands that kind of authority and calls his disciples, leave everything and follow me, that's lordship. That's giving up power to someone else. And most of us don't want to give that power away. As many things that are going on in our lives that have us out of control, that are enslaving us to things, our thought patterns, or things that are controlling us, things we don't like, and yet we learn to live with them. As much as that is going on, we would even find it more distasteful to submit ourselves to Jesus and give him absolute control. And so the people say, leave our region. They're afraid of him. They don't want to give up control of their lives to a Lord. Jesus makes change. And Jesus is Lord. Some of us have realized the only way for us to be changed, to get rid of our sins. All of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Some people do realize from the community. Some people do realize, I don't have it within myself. I need a Savior. I need a Lord. And some people do when they hear the message, when they come into the presence of Jesus. We should be encouraged that not everybody is selfish and doesn't want change, and not everybody is afraid of lordship. Some people do, like this man, when he was changed, completely wanted to follow Jesus. Some people will open their hearts. But we should be aware that in every community, people who don't open their hearts, it's usually because they don't want change and they don't want a Lord. They don't want anybody else calling the shots. And finally, this man was given a mission. You'll notice that many times in Jesus' ministry, after he does a healing, the people want to follow Jesus, and Jesus doesn't, and then they want to preach. And Jesus says, don't preach. But to this man, he says just the opposite. You do preach. You do go tell people what has happened to you. Go home and tell your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. And so the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis just how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. The Decapolis means 10 cities. And the Decapolis was a group of cities. It's kind of a small map, but on the right side of the Jordan River, except for one case of Scythopolis, which is right on the Jordan, just to the west of it. But the other cities, Philadelphia, Gerasa, Peja, Gadara, Raphana, Dion, Hypus, Kanatha, and Damascus. Those 10 cities are called the Decapolis. And these were all Roman city-states, primarily with Roman governors and Roman control and Roman culture, Greek and then Roman culture, and primarily made up of Gentile people. Not many Jews were there, and mostly Gentile composition, which gives logic to the fact that they were herding pigs. The Jews had rules against herding pigs, and so this was a Gentile man. This was a person completely unacceptable to Jesus. I would imagine it would have been really difficult for Jesus to fit him into his following. Yeah, come follow me, bring your bacon along, and we're going to go preach to Jews. That's not going to work for a while until the Cornelius episode in Acts chapter 10, when finally the gospel does open up to Gentiles. And so it's just not part of Jesus' program. And so Jesus says, no, don't follow me. You go back to your own city. I believe Luke says, go back to Gadara, the place where you're from. But in Mark, he records, go to the Decapolis, which is not only the place where you're from, but to the whole area of the 10 cities. And so the man does so, and he preaches and teaches his own people. And I've thought about that as God has changed us. And concluding, I just want to say this. As God changes us, and I'm speaking mostly to changed people, to people who have accepted the Lordship of Jesus Christ, and we have realized that we need to be changed. And even though we're afraid of it, we've invited it in, and we've asked Jesus to change us, and he is changing us, and done marvelous things. Even as he has done to this man, he is doing in our lives. Jesus comes into our life, and he changes, and he gives us a story. And he gives us a story similar to this man's. And he tells us to do the same thing. Go and people, go and tell the people his done. Last Wednesday night we watched a movie together about a gentleman who wrote a song. His name, I'm trying to think, Bart Willard, I believe. Certainly most of you, if not all, have heard of the song, I Can Only Imagine. He was in a group that played music trying to honor Christ, the group called Mercy Me, which at the time had no notoriety, no publicity. And he wanted someone else to sing this song. Eventually he sang it himself. But one of the things we learn from that movie, from his life, a real story, a person who gave himself to Christ, was the great hatred, dislike he had for his father, who was just an animal. He calls him a beast. And the great difficulty, impossible for him to forgive his father, even after his father repented and came to Christ. And the great confrontation that he had, the great struggle he had with befriending his father through that. And it was said in his life that when he wrote this song, he was writing it on a bus. He wrote it in just a short amount of a few minutes, or maybe less than an hour. And someone who was giving him some consulting and counseling said, it didn't take you a few minutes to write that song. It took you a lifetime. He has a story, and he told the story in the song, I Can Only Imagine, well, at least his hope for his father now, who has become his hero because of what God did in his story. All of us have a story of how God is working in us. Great things that God has done for us and is doing even now to help us learn how to forgive, help us learn how to overcome the things that control us, the things we're enslaved to, how to overcome our fears. I want you to think about your story. And I want you to think about how you can just tell that story to other people. Because as God's church, as we tell our story to other people, He'll use those stories to bring people to Him. Amen? God will use your story. Think about it this week. Try and write it down. Ask yourself, what has God done for me? Write it down. Maybe put it in the prayer request next week. God has done this for me. I just want to tell this story. And write a short paragraph. Share what God has done for you and watch God bring people to Him as they see how God changes people. We're going to sing this song, and then after which we'll have a prayer. The song is